While at Framingham State, Dr. Rincon taught courses related to the sociology of race and ethnic relations, courses on immigration and globalization, and served as assistant director of CELTS. We are delighted to welcome her back to Framingham, even if virtually, to receive the Distinguished Faculty Award for Excellence in Teaching. Congratulations and welcome back, Lena.
Thank you so much, May. I'm so pleased to be back. I miss you all so much, and this is also going to be an emotional presentation. I am really eager to share my journey with you all. And I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't because all of the work that we did together and the wonderful experience that I had at Framingham State. So thank you for having me. I'm gonna share my screen. So hopefully I can make this work. So please bear with me. Okay, not my email. Can you see a slideshow? And are you seeing the full slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right. Again, thank you for having me today. I'm really honored to be here, to be back in this community that I cherish so much. I think it's quite interesting and quite wonderful that I'm receiving an award for excellence in teaching today, now that I'm not teaching anymore, at least not in the traditional way. Today, I want to share some reflections on what I learned about teaching at FSU and what our students taught me about teaching to change our community for social justice. I miss it here. So many memories, so many communities created over time, so much learning over time. It is about how these communities and how these memories were formed that I'd like to talk about tonight. I remember my first week of classes at FSU in 2015. I came in confident, although very nervous. I figured that my experience using team-based learning in my courses was going to give me an edge teaching our students. I had tried it as a graduate student, and it led to really meaningful class discussions. Even in large lecture halls, I got to learn about how some of my students were making connections between class materials and their own lived experiences, especially in my race and ethnicity and immigration courses. I felt I was going to be an impactful teacher that first semester at FSU. I managed to build rapport with my students. I got them to share their questions and participate actively in class and to trust me. Things were feeling pretty good and in control. One morning in my introduction to sociology class, when I was about to go business as usual, my student Talia asks me, "Dr. Rincon, did you know about the kid that put a Confederate flag sticker on his laptop and showed up to class with it? I'm really upset. What can we do about this?" I froze. I didn't know how to answer this student's question. As a graduate student, I learned by watching my own department that when these things happened, silence was the imperative. It felt like saying, "I'll get back to you on that one," was not appropriate. The student's question was not an empirical question. It was a call to action. The message of objectivity and lack of action that I had internalized through my education had to be challenged. My student's question was a loud call to action to more proactively center my students' experiences and voices into my pedagogy, to discuss concrete steps that we could all take to change a system that oppresses underrepresented students daily and at every hour of the day. The spiel that I used to give my students, that sociology is depressing but really interesting, had to switch towards collective action. That same year, Virginia Rotter and Xavier Guadalupe Diaz began conversations about organizing a Black Lives Matter teach-in. As I shared my experiences in the classroom with Virginia, she invited me to join the planning team. The opportunity to illuminate how systemic racism in society and in academia is pervasive by encouraging faculty to discuss it in their classroom was exhilarating. As part of the organizing team, I developed a survey to understand how participating faculty navigated the challenge of incorporating Black Lives Matter content in their courses. In the article we published, we revealed that although many faculty members were excited to take on the task of adding BLM-related content in their courses, the challenge intimidated them. They were in the same place I was when my student asked me, "What do we do, Dr. Rincon?" The intimidation is ingrained in the pillars of academia and higher education, where lack of representation of underrepresented individuals in different disciplines is rarely discussed, or it's discussed in the context of diversity as a nice thing we should do. The intimidation comes from what we all, academics, have internalized as the normality and centrality of whiteness, of ableism, of sexism, and of classism in the curriculum. The intimidation comes from not knowing how to discuss race or racism, because we have been told that racism is something that really only happens outside of academia. I continued to engage in ways in which I could proactively center students' voices in my teaching. That proactivity needed more intentionality if the goal was to understand, see, and embed the experiences of success, of trauma, and of marginalization of our students of color, of our students with disabilities, to embed them as forms of knowledge. This urge to change the way I had been teaching led me to engage in methods that intentionally and genuinely put students' voices and experiences in the forefront. In 2017, Martel Pipkins and I created a collaborative experience called the Crear Collective, creative and reflective exchange, action, and reawakening. We linked two introductory courses and created teaching activities where students from both courses could write letters to each other about the critical connections they were making between sociological concepts and their own experiences. They could go on various field trips together and could have conversations outside of the classroom that were conducive to their engagement in collective action towards social justice. We found that this approach really excited some students, but some of our students of color were not comfortable sharing their experiences of trauma or marginalization so openly with others. With the increased public awareness of racist hate crimes on campus, and with the heightened awareness our students had about how their participation in rallies and protests could be impactful, I decided to turn one of my research methods courses into a space where students could bravely and intentionally learn from one another about how systemic racism impacts all of them. I tasked students with interviewing other students on campus to understand how they were processing and making sense of the hate crimes. This led to eye-opening moments for some of my white students, and unfortunately, painful moments for some students of color, some of my students of color. As a poet, I realized that my students needed to process this experience beyond its intellectualization. They needed this process to be personal, if some of them wanted to make it public. I invited students to reflect through creative writing, through poetry. Some of my students were intimidated by this exercise. I gave them some prompts and guidelines and encouraged them to write. I also encouraged them to share their writing with the class. They could do it anonymously if they wanted. This exercise elevated the sense of great community that I wanted to have in the classroom. To me, this was a good example of switching a teacher-centered class into a student-centered class. At the end of this course, I saw the great potential the college classroom has to mobilize the co-creation of knowledge and also to build community towards social justice, not only inside of the classroom, but outside of it. Here you can see another group of students on their last day of class where they are making their commitment to fighting for social justice public. This great potential can only happen if we are intentional every step of the way. This idea solidified as I traveled with Patricia Sanchez-Connolly, Beth Whaley, and a group of students to El Paso, Texas, to learn about the experience of immigration and the situation at the border from the perspective of immigrants and community organizations that directly supported them. In this experience, I really understood what Patricia and Beth already had known for a long time. Supporting the co-creation of knowledge with a critical and/or radical lens can really prepare our students to truly engage in social activism and social justice after they graduate. In this experience, I didn't only learn from students' aspirations and their connections to the border, but also from how my masterful faculty colleagues were cultivating students to assertively engage in social justice and social change. Now, how do we connect this to the larger ecosystem where we work, the university? Student success is faculty success. A lot of you have heard me say that. If we are to embrace the mission of truly being anti-racist institutions, we need to create spaces for faculty to reflect, to learn, to make mistakes with the goal of student success. This goal has to go beyond the concern with the DFW rates. We have to ensure that we, as a community, are proactively and intentionally examining all of our practices to ensure that our students can be safe and feel like they belong in our academic fields, in our classrooms. I am proud of the work that I was able to do with Catherine Dignam, Ishara Mills-Henry, and Amy Knapp to start building a culture of reflexivity and learning around racial equity. Using similar methods to those I have used with students in the classroom, we have trained 2 cohorts of STEM faculty at FSU and Masdale Community College. Many of these faculty have become advocates and leaders in their departments in advancing racial equity. Thanks to this experience, I felt empowered to expand the potential of these trainings with STEM faculty and offer similar experiences to other faculty. I designed a curriculum and organized a community of faculty learners, and I tried to empower them to become agents of social change in their departments in a year-long anti-racist pedagogies academy. As we became an anti-racist institution in 2020, I was also able to use my CELTS hat and had the wonderful opportunity of partnering with our former VP of Diversity and Inclusion, Connie Cabello, and our interim Assistant Vice President of Human Resources and Equal Opportunity, Kim Dexter, to create and implement the campus-wide initiative, Continual Departmental Conversations on Anti-Racism. We curated the guides and designed the initiative to encourage everyone to engage in learning and actions towards anti-racism in their own departments. I hope that some of these initiatives, solely inspired and informed by our students' voices, are having some impact today at FSU and in the whole system of higher education. I want to leave you with this quote by Bell Hooks, with the hope that we, as academics, hear the urgent need to collective action towards social justice in every action that we take within and outside the university. One of the dangers we face in our educational systems is the loss of a feeling of community, not just the loss of closeness among those with whom we work and with our students, but also the loss of a feeling of connection and closeness with the world beyond the academy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena, and thank you to all of our presenters this evening. I would like to open it up now